Alrighty, so another MLS match week is in the books. So let's take a look at these 12 games that happened this week. And there's no doubt that there were some very exciting games that happened this week. Obviously, we had free derby and a heavyweight matchup between Seattle and Atlanta that could potentially be a preview of MLS Cup. And also, one very common theme that I saw this week is bad refereeing decision. And there was a whole ton of controversial call this week, and that there are a lot of teams that are pretty much up in arms in terms of the fact that pro referees are not doing a very good job this week. And one of those teams that is kind of up in arms in this is New England, who they drew 2-2 against DC, and this game had controversy as it has been for most of these games that happened this week, and New England fans are absolutely fuming the fact that they had a man sent off in the 63rd minute. But of course we'll get to that. But in the first half, 4 minutes into this game, Theo Bunbury scored from Casado and Anababa to give New England a 1-0 lead. Bunbury, that's now 4 goals that he have scored in the last 5 games, and this is just a classic example of what happened when a striker is able to end a long drying spell, and that now he is on a roll. Because, you know, as I said many times before with strikers, if they can just score 1 goal, and if they can just kind of get that monkey off their back, they are going to start to score goals, and they are going to go on a bit of a tear. And right now, it seemed like Theo Bunbury is doing that, and that as soon as he finally scored that goal, I remember when he ended that drought, I believe against the Galaxy. Now you start seeing him scoring almost every single game and kind of look like the Theo Bunbury from 2 years ago where he scored 14 goals that season. So New England, of course, up 1-0 in that game. Then they double the lead when Carlos Hill scores to give them a 2-0 lead over DC United. And New England was absolutely dominating at that point. And that DC they had no answer in terms of this very good New England team. But DC did get a bit of a lifeline when Jara scores from Areola to give them the first goal and give them a goal back in this game. And I'm pretty sure New England and Bruce Arena will be a little bit ticked off the fact that they were dominating throughout the first half, and then they gave up a late goal in the latter part of the first half to basically give DC a chance to come back into this game. And then in the second half, this is where I get to the controversy, and this is where I will get to why New England fans are absolutely fuming about this game, is because of the Zahipo sending off. Now, this was actually a second yellow that Zahipo got, and it looked like what happened was that he obstructed Jara run, and Jara basically kind of fall onto the ground, and Zahibo did kind of step in a little bit, and then Jara basically kind of took the contact, and the referee saw that was a foul, and it was deeming a yellow card. And since Zahibo, who got a yellow card, I believe, for time wasting or dissent earlier in this game, he got his second yellow to send off. But when you look on the replay of that, it looked like Jara dived that, and that Jara kind of sold that a little bit. I mean, I know, as I said, Zahibo, he kind of did step in to that challenge a little bit, but Jara definitely looked like he tried to make a dive, and that there was really no contact whatsoever that Zahibo made on Jara, and that probably should have not been a yellow card. And, you know, New England fans, they're absolutely up in arms about that, and I definitely don't disagree with them, and I do understand why they're very pissed off about that, because now they're down to 10 men, and now the fact that they are hanging on with a 2-1 lead down to 10 men, you know, it's definitely, they know that something is eventually going to go against them, and it did in the 86th minute when Quincy Amarikwa scores to tie the game up. Always love when Quincy Amarikwa score, obviously former Quakes and forever a Quakes player, and this was a great goal from Quincy Amarikwa. Like, this ball was near, the ball was near his head, and the fact that I was shocked that he was able to just hit that off of his volley, kind of did like a little karate kind of kick kind of on the volley to hit that into the back of net. This is definitely going to be a goal that will be nominated as the goal of the week. But at the same time, knowing that DC, of course, get this equalizer, this makes me really wonder that this is really going to get New England fans very pissed off because of the fact that they shouldn't be down a man and they shouldn't be down to 10 men for the last 37 minutes or the last 27 minutes of this game. And also, by the way, with DC scoring this goal, this is the first time in 5 games that they actually have scored more than a goal in a game. And ironically, as it has been the case for them, with them scoring more than a goal in a game in these past 2 months, the time when they do score more than a goal in the game, they don't get all 3 points. It happens the last time when they got more than a goal in a game where they drew 3-3 against the Chicago Fire. Here they drew 2-2 against DC. And overall, I think nobody should be happy about this result. I mean, DC, obviously, they're frustrated the fact that, once again, they drop points at Audi Field, which has been a very common theme this year, and that it's something that definitely DC do not want to see, consider they were so strong last year at Audi Field. And also New England, because of the refereeing decision that go against them, and that have they had 11 men in this game, they probably would have not conceded that equalizer in the 86th minute. But in terms of shots in this game, DC had 17 shots compared to 12 that New England has. 3 shots on goal compared to 5 that New England has. 8 shots off target compared to 3 that New England has. 6 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that New England has. And DC had 65% possession compared to 35% possession. And like I said, overall, New England, the good news is they still extend their unbeaten streak to 8 games now, but you would think that they should have got all 3 points in this, and that if it wasn't for the refereeing decision, they would have won this one, and would have actually gone above the red line right now. I was thinking they actually are tied with TFC, but just a little bit spoiler alert, TFC actually won their game and that they're still in 7th place. So it's a bit of a missed opportunity for them to go above the red line, but there's no doubt that with the way this team is playing, they will find themselves above the red line anytime soon. But moving on into the next match is LAFC. So LAFC won this one, and I think this is the first time I get to say it all season long where I'm actually surprised that LAFC have won this one. As dominant as LAFC has been in terms of all their win, this one really surprised me because they made 9 changes in this game. And they had to do it because this is less than 48 hours since they played in that U.S. Open Cup game against the Timbers, which, again, it goes back to me what I said in the preview where I do feel sorry for LAFC fans who is got to be absolutely livid the fact that they had to do an incredibly short turnaround and that they have to go on the road to play an important league game against Houston, and that a lot of LAFC fan probably thought that there was no way that this team could have actually pull this one off. But yet, they pulled this one off of Houston by winning 3-1. Although in the first half, Houston actually got off to a good start, and they actually almost scored the fastest goal of the season when Elise, of course, hits the post 15 seconds into the game. Now, the good news for Houston is that Kyoto would eventually score from Martinez to give Houston a 1-0 lead 3 minutes into the game. And then they had numerous opportunity to get that second goal. And remember how I said Albert Elise hit the post 15 seconds into the game? Well, he could have had 3 goals in the first half. Like, the amount of times that he had a couple of chances of scoring goal, and that there's a couple of times where Tyler Miller, who really did not had a good game in this one, where he just basically come off of his line way too early and just come off his line ill-advisedly, and that couple of times Elise almost caught him out, and the fact that he wasn't able to capitalize on that really kind of surprised me about that. And that Houston, as I said, they should have been at least 3-0 up in the first half, and those missed chances that the Dynamo had in the first half would turns out to haunt them, because right as we're about to head to halftime, just as you thought Houston was going to get that 1-0 lead heading to halftime, it's Diamande scoring from Gwyn and Vasil tied the game up at 1 apiece, and I'm pretty sure Houston fans are probably livid about that because they absolutely dominated that game, and that goal really just completely gone against the run of plays. And then in the second half, Diamande scored from Gwyn to give LAFC a 2-1 lead. Now, in the second half, LAFC did decide to bring some of their starters in this game. Rossi, of course, came on in this game in the second half. But Vela did not play throughout this game as he was one of those star players that were rested in this game. And then, as I mentioned about Rossi coming into this game, he would, of course, seal this game up in the 88th minute when he scores from Perez and Dio to give LAFC a 3-1 win. And in terms of the shots in this game, LAFC had 14 shots compared to 13 that Houston had, 8 shots on goal compared to 5 that Houston had, 2 shots off target compared to 7 that Houston has, 4 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that Houston had, and LAFC had 51% possession compared to 49% possession that Houston has. So for LAFC, they continue to have this magical run where even in a game that they're not supposed to win and in a game that everybody thought that they were going to lose, they somehow, of course, pull off a victory. And as for the Dynamo, this is a very, very bad loss. And I know throughout the season, whenever a team face LAFC, I would just kind of give them the pass because LAFC is so good and there's really no shame of losing the best team in the league. But when you're facing the best team in the league, and that best team in the league is basically conceding this game by being 9 changes and pretty much put a reserve team in this one against them, and the fact that you're playing at home, which is really the only reason why this team is even in the playoff conversation, because if it wasn't for these home win that Houston has, they wouldn't be near the bottom of the Western Conference right now. And the fact that you lose at home and you know your home record is what really is potentially be the difference of you making the playoffs or not. Yeah, this is not good when you decided to lose at home, and that I really think Houston might be the team that could be the odd man out, and that at the end of the season they might fall short in terms of making the playoffs, just like what happened last season. But yeah, next up, boy, this was a one-sided Cali Clasico, wasn't it? And I'm gonna try my best to be as neutral as possible when I review this game, and that I'm gonna try my best to not really make things more misery to Galaxy fans, who I do feel a little bit sorry for them suffering such an embarrassment in this game, of the fact that they just got completely ripped apart by the Quakes in this one on their own turf nevertheless. But having said that, like I said, this was a one-sided Cali Clasico, and probably the most one-sided Cali Clasico that I have ever seen before. Like, besides the first 5 minutes where the Quakes, they kind of felt asleep a little bit and they didn't really come out of the gate very strong. And because of that, they concede a goal very early on when Felcher scores from Jonathan Dos Santos on a header. And, early on, we didn't really do very well in terms of defending those set pieces. The rest of the way, the Quakes just absolutely dominate. Like, from minute 5 and from the rest of the play on, it was pretty much all San Jose in this game. And the fact that, we didn't get the first goal and get the equalizer goal in the 61st minute has a lot to do of the fact that David Bingham was just absolutely on the top of his game. And that, as much as I have really give a lot of hate toward David Bingham because of what he did a couple of years ago with the Quakes, of how he decided to switch alliance and join our most hated rival, while kind of like exiting the club in a very toxic kind of way, I do have to give him a little bit of respect of this game, with the fact that, he was hung out to dry by this Galaxy defense, and the fact that he absolutely stood on his head and just pretty much trying to hold the fort as long as possible and almost kind of steal one out of the Quakes in this one. I definitely do have to respect him in terms of what he did in this game, and that he made 14 saves in this game. Like, I know the man of the match will probably go to the winning team, and I would say probably Vako might be be the guy that gets the man of the match. But in some way, I kind of also want to give man of the match to David Bingham, where he made 14 saves in this game, and that he was only one shy from making the most save ever in a single game. And the fact that if it wasn't for him to make all those kind of saves, this was going to be more than a 3-1 victory for the Quakes. This would have been at least 6 or 7-1 that the Quakes would win. And I'm not even exaggerating in terms of what this game would turn out to be. Like, this game would have turned out to be one of the most, if not the most ugliest Cali Clasico that I will ever see, if it wasn't for Bingham basically just stood on his head for most of the game. And as I was saying, of the fact that he was stood on his head throughout the game and making some crucial save, it was incredibly infuriating as a Quakes fan, seeing those shots being saved every time and seeing us miss the target. Like, that's been one of the biggest problem with the Quakes so far for these last couple of games and doing this run. And as much as this team has been playing so much fun soccer and that they have just been running people out of the park for most of these games, one of the reasons why this team is not like at LAFC level right now, and probably won't be mentioned in terms of LAFC playing like in LAFC level, is because they just could not put the ball into the back of net. It was a problem against Minnesota on the road last time. It was a problem against DC on the road when we play against them, especially in the first half. And it was once again the problem. And I thought for sure that we were not going to get that equalizer because of the fact that the longer we were going to miss those chances, the less likely the fact that we were going to get the equalizer. But credit to the Quakes, they eventually did get the equalizer, and it was Vaco that scores from Jackson Yeo. It was a great shot from Vaco, who basically hits it low from about 25 yards out and able to just get past Bingham off that left post to tie the game up. And not only the fact that I was really just celebrating like crazy at the viewing party, but the relief on my face was just real. Like, I knew that no, finally we got the goal that we 250% deserve in this game. But I knew that the second goal wasn't going to come very, very long. And that I knew the second goal and that we were eventually going to get the lead in this game. And that was exactly the case where, oh, by the way, I actually didn't put it on the board here. I don't know why I didn't put it on the board here. I think I kind of made a little bit of a mistake there. But literally 3 minutes later, Houston, of course, scores the go-ahead goal for the Quakes from Vaco. And this was kind of a very Wando-esque kind of goal where Vaco basically drives it to the left and then he basically swing it back to the middle. And then Houston basically did his Wando-esque one-touch stuff to put it into the back of the net. And originally when I saw that goal, I thought Wando scored that goal because that is just a very Wando kind of poacher-esque kind of goal. But it was Houston that, of course, scored that goal. And Houston, believe it or not, he literally just came on like a minute into the game. Like a minute before this goal, he was actually substituted and Wando was coming off. So, you know, that is also another reason why I thought it was Wando that scored the goal. Because I thought Wando, of course, never got subbed out just a minute when Houston, of course, came on. So, at that point, we were getting the second goal. And eventually, we did get that third goal to basically shut down shop and pretty much just end all hopes of the Galaxy potentially getting an equalizer. When Jackson Yeo, of course, getting that goal and able to score from a volley that, of course, came to him. And I think of all the goal that David Bingham has conceded in this game, this one I think he definitely want to have back, because when Vaco basically strike that one, he did save that shot, but he basically paired right into Jackson Yeo, who basically just kind of like hits it off the volley. I mean, Jackson Yeo still had to do a lot in terms of trying to hit that one off the volley and have to have perfect technique to make sure it doesn't just go over the bar. But that is exactly what he didn't do. He had that perfect technique, and just like that we took the 3-1 lead, and pretty much it was game, set, and match in that game. And yeah, I mean, the Quakes, of course, win in this Cali Clasico. And just to emphasize why this was probably a one-sided Cali Clasico, and that why this is one of the most one-sided Cali Clasico, look at the stats in this game. The shots, 32-5. The shots on goal, 16-1. Shots off target, 9-3. Block shot 7-1, and the only closest stats in terms of the stats in this game was the possession, where the Quakes had 55% possession compared to 45 that the Galaxy had. But most of that 45% possession came in the latter part, where the Quakes pretty much just shut down shop and took the foot off the gas and let the Galaxy had more of the possession. And oh, by the way, the Quakes having 32 shots and 16 shots on goal is the most that they have ever had in team history. Most shots that they ever had in team history is now 32 shots, and most shots on goal that they have in team history is 16 shots on goal. And as I mentioned, Bingham, 14 saves, was one shy away from tying the most save ever in a single game. And yeah, it just shows you how dominant this performance is, and it just shows you that this was almost similar to what LAFC did to Vancouver not a couple of weeks, but last week, where remember how LAFC had like 30 plus shots in this game and like 16 plus shots on goal against Vancouver, who only had like 6 shots in that game. And that one, of course, ended 6-1. This one ended 3-1 because of the fact that we weren't very clinical in terms of finishing. And I think that's probably the only negative I would say about the Quakes in this game, where yeah, I mean, the finishing is still is something that I am still a little bit concerned with this team, with the way that, yes, they create good opportunity, but they just seems to have a hard time in terms of putting those away. But having said that, overall, this is a complete victory for the Quakes, and it's a victory that I would never thought I would see in my entire life, seeing the Quakes play against the Galaxy. Like, especially the fact that the Galaxy is not even that bad this year, and the fact that they are in the top 2 in the standings. Well, not anymore. They actually dropped down to 3rd place after this game. It's incredible seeing the fact that one team basically showed up and just completely destroyed the other team, who was playing at home and were the better team in terms of the standings, and they can just get completely destroyed like that. And if you're the Galaxy, I think this game is a huge wake-up call that, yeah, this team clearly should not be anywhere near the top 3 of the Western Conference. And the fact that of all those games that the Galaxy have won has mainly because of Zlatan kind of bailing them out, and they kind of rode their luck a little bit. I hope this game is a good wake-up call that, yeah, they're not really that good, and that if they do not address that defense, which in this game was absolutely atrocious. Like, that third goal that they conceded was probably the worst defending I have ever seen this season in MLS, where there was literally, like, besides the fact that Bingham, of course, probably should have not parried that one right into the path of Jackson Yeo, but the fact that there was 4 Galaxy defenders just stand there and watch that ball pop right back to Jackson Yeo, and did not even bother to like contest to trying to block that shot or even take it away from Jackson Yeo. Yeah, that is some very criminal defending, and that is some of the worst defending that I've ever seen so far. And if they do not address that issue, and also do not have actually a plan B, or do not have another way to beat this team I really fear could actually tumble down the standings. And that, you know, the luck that they have and the way that Zlatan has bailed them out throughout each of the game this season, eventually that is going to run out. And once that runs out, and once they can't be a team that has a couple of ways of beating team and only have like one way to beat team, yeah, teams are going to figure them out, and they're going to exploit their weakness. And boy, did the Quakes exploit their weakness. And well, the biggest weakness, besides the fact that their defense was just garbage, is the fact that they just cannot play out of the press. Like, that is the whole reason why the Quakes were able to continue to put on a shooting gallery on the Galaxy, because the Galaxy just gets stuck in their own half for a majority of the game, and they just could not play out of the press. But moving on into the next game, as I spent a lot of minute in terms of that one, because that was probably a game that I could actually spend time, like maybe an hour, talk about how crazy that one is. But now talking about another derby, or as this one I think is called the Great Canadian Derby. I mean, there isn't really a name in terms of this derby between Montreal and TFC, but you know both of these teams hate each other, and it definitely showed in this game, where Yeah, there was definitely some challenge flying in, and there was definitely some very heated kind of display that has happened in this one where guys were kind of getting in each other's faces. But in the first half, there was no score in this game. And in the second half, eventually we did have our first goal. And you knew that this game, despite the fact that both teams had a couple of decent chances, there wasn't really like some golden opportunity chances for each team to break through, and that it just felt like this game was screaming for a moment of magic for a team to get the breakthrough. And boy, that is exactly what happened to Alejandro Pozuelo, where he basically had a moment of magic, basically hits it from about 25 yards out, and he of course was assisted by Delgado to of course give TFC a 1-0 lead. I do question the fact that why in the world there was no one closing down Pozuelo in that incident, because you know Pozuelo is going to try to strike it from about 25 yards out if you're going to give him the space. But take nothing away from that goal from Pozuelo. It was an absolute class goal. And then we had like a 25-minute delay around the 65th minute mark because of lightning. And then when the play was resumed, for the first 10 minutes, it was absolutely pouring down at Stadio Saputo here. And the fact that I thought, man, they probably should have delayed this game a little bit more with the way that how much the rain was pouring, and that it really felt like it reminds me of earlier this season between Columbus and Atlanta, where they were just playing in a monsoon kind of weather. But it seemed like the rain didn't really affect both teams, because it seemed like both teams were still trying to go for it and trying to get that next goal. And Montreal, obviously they kind of had the better chances for the last 25 minutes and after the weather delay. And Quentin Westberg, he came up with a couple of big saves in this game to keep it at 1-0. But eventually Josie Altidore would shut the door and pretty much win the derby for TFC when he scored in the 95th minute. And he also did a very savage celebration where he basically just shushed the supporters, the Montreal supporters right there. And I'll tell you what, if doing that in MLS, I think it's okay. But if you do that in Europe, yeah, you are gonna get a lot of ball kind of thrown in. Or actually, if you even do that to, like, let's say LAFC or Orlando City, for instance, yeah, it's not going to be very pretty whatsoever. And I'm sorry that I actually call out LAFC and Orlando City, because those are the two fan base that recently, I remember, they decided to throw trash onto the field. So in that instant, I have a feeling probably Josie Altidore is gonna get beer chucked down of him from the fans if he decided to do that there. But still, after all that, TFC, of course, get a 2-0 win, and a win that they desperately need. Like, as I mentioned with the fact that this is a derby game, I also want to say this is a desperation derby, because both of these teams are desperate to try to get 3 points. And it was TFC, of course, that won the desperation derby. And in terms of shots in this game, Montreal had 17 shots compared to 15 that TFC had. 4 shots on goal compared to 7 that TFC had. 10 shots off target compared to 6 that TFC had. 3 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that TFC had. And Montreal had 44% possession compared to 56% possession that TFC had. And with that win, TFC, of course, still stay above the red line. And as for Montreal, yeah, this is definitely not looking good, and that I think there might be starting time to feel like there is a need of panic for Montreal right now, because throughout this season they've been grinding out resort and been trying to riding their luck a little bit. But when you try to do that, eventually, if you're going to continue to ride out your luck and grind out resort, it's only going to take as far as it gets before you are just going to get exposed, and that you will be find out that maybe there are a team that might not make the playoffs this season. And I think TFC really exploit Montreal in this game, and that Montreal is really struggling right now in these last couple of weeks, and they are falling down the table in the Eastern Conference. Like, they're now in 5th place in the Eastern Conference, and if they keep on this kind of run, yeah, I have a feeling they could definitely fall out of the playoff spot, and especially with teams below them that are hungry to try to get wins and also have games in hand because they play some of the most games this season. I do have a lot of concern with Montreal going for it this season. But moving on in the next match, one of those teams that could definitely be rising up the table and trying to get those playoff spots is Orlando City. So they of course got an ugly 1-0 win against the Columbus Crew, and the reason why I said it's an ugly 1-0 win is because this was a very boring game. Like the first half, yeah, there wasn't really much to talk about in the first half, and I could have literally did what I did a couple of weeks ago where I put like ZZZZZ mark because you would forget that there was really nothing happened in the first half. And I was surprised the fact that when you look at the highlights and watch the highlights either on MLS website or on their YouTube channel, they actually show highlights of the first half. But in the second half, it was the same thing. It was a very boring game, and it looked like this one was going to head to a 0-0 draw. But in the 84th minute, Orlando City finally found their breakthrough, and it would be their homegrown player that actually got the breakthrough when Michel, I think that's how you pronounce his name, scored from Juan and Sane to give them a 1-0 lead. That's the first ever goal from Michel in this game, and also scoring on his debut. Like, that has to feel very good for him, scoring on your debut and also scoring the winning goal in this game and getting the crucial 3 points for your team. I mean, he must be really just over the moon right now with the way that this game has gone. But yeah, that of course was your final score in this game, and in terms of the shots in this game and the stats, pretty much just tells you why this is a boring game, because Orlando City only had 4 shots in this game compared to 11 that Columbus had. 1 shot on goal, which is the one that they had in the 84th minute, compared to just 1 shot on goal also for Columbus. 2 shots off target compared to 7 that Columbus had. 1 shot that was blocked compared to 3 that Columbus had. Possession-wise, 57% possession compared to 43% possession that Orlando City has. And that, for Columbus, yeah, it's just one of these years that just nothing goes right with this team. Like, when you are like one of the worst team in the league, and when you like week in and week out have been having kind of like bad luck like this where you concede a late winner, you know that you are having a very bad season, and that is exactly what Columbus has happening right now, and they are really kind of like nearing almost a record mark of just being very bad throughout the stretch, and that I think this is now 1 win in 15 games during this stretch, which I think that is right up there from last season's stretch where Orlando City, if you guys remember, Lions fan, that you also had a stretch where you went 1 win in like 20 kind of matches. So yeah, Columbus are looking to kind of match that kind of record, although I'm pretty sure a lot of Crews fans definitely don't want to, and that, as I said many times before, I think Columbus is done. Like, I just don't see how this team can actually make it to the playoffs. Even if they're going to add some acquisition and add some attacking pieces, I just don't see how this team is going to get to the playoffs with the way that they just look. They just look down and out every single week. But one team is definitely not down and out is Minnesota, who have now won 7 games in a row. And let me repeat that. They won 7 games in a row, and it's actually in all competition. It's actually not in the league, which includes, of course, the U.S. Open Cup. But they won their 7 games in a row by beating FC Dallas 1-0. And in some way, this game kind of really reminds me a little bit of the Quakes versus RSL game from last week, where it just seemed like in the first half, tire leg really start to show for the Loons, and that Minnesota for these past couple of weeks has been a high-flying kind of offensive team, scoring like 6, 7, and even like 5 goals. And that, they scored 6 goals just in the middle of the week against New Mexico United in the U.S. Open Cup. And that, this was a game that it clearly shown that they were just kind of getting very tired out, and that since Adrian, he did not really rotate his squad very often, you knew that eventually that fatigue was going to catch up, and it did in this game where they weren't very threatening in this one. And just as I thought that this game was going to end 0-0, and that, Dallas themselves, they didn't really create a lot of chances of them own either, and that just as I thought that this game was going to end 0-0, there is that kid again, Mason Toye, scoring a goal in the 91st minute, and that, as I said, I'm already jumping on the hype train of Mason Toye right now, and I think after this goal, this train is now become a bullet train right now. Like, this kid right now is just absolutely on fire with the way that I think he's now scored 6 goals in his last 5 games, and the confidence level of this kid has to be through the roof. Now, I know for sure that he probably will not maintain this kind of a crazy run that he's been on throughout these last couple of weeks for the remaining of the season. But to see a kid like that and see him accelerate like this, if he can, of course, continue throughout these next couple of seasons, maybe he could be definitely a shout to be in the U.S. men's national team. I mean, or maybe even get some call from European team and get some interest from European teams in the future, because right now he is just playing out of his mind. And for a kid that a couple of weeks ago no one really heard about him, to now everybody have heard of him because of him scoring a bunch of goals for Minnesota, yeah, that is just been, and it's been an incredible story for Mason Toye. Now, that wasn't really the most dramatic part of this game, and despite the fact that for majority of this game it was pretty much a snooze fest kind of game, similar to the Orlando City versus Columbus game, the last 10 minutes and in stoppage time in this game was as hectic as it gets. I mean, just as you thought that Minnesota was going to get all 3 points and that Mason Toye, of course, was going to get the winner, then there was a very controversial penalty that Dallas have won. And what happened here was that, oh God, I forgot who. I think it was Baji that kind of like went down after Vito Monone was kind of coming off his line, and as he was trying to get the ball, I think it was Baji that kind of fall on the ground, and it looked like Monone actually made some contact of him, but the referee says that there was no contact made. But then they of course look at VAR, and when I look on the replay a couple of times, I don't think that is a foul, and I just don't see why that should be called a foul. But apparently the referee says it was a penalty, and that Monone did kind of caught Baji a little bit. But credit to Monone for making a big save and kind of make it up for after he of course made a bit of a mistake early on by saving that penalty that Rito Ziegler of course missed that, and that Ziegler is a guy that don't really miss a lot of penalty, and the fact that as I said, Minone able to save that penalty, that is definitely a little bit of a surprise. But still, after all that, I think Minnesota deserved the 3 points. And in terms of shots in this game, they had 12 shots compared to 16 that Dallas had, 4 shots on goal compared to 6 that Dallas had. Both teams had 5 shots off target, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 5 that Dallas had. And possession-wise, 56% possession compared to 44% possession that Minnesota has. And Minnesota, this is an impressive win for them. And the fact that now they are all the way up to 4th in the standing, and that this team, with the way that they've been playing throughout the past couple of weeks, there is no doubt in my mind that this team could definitely make the playoffs. And for Dallas, it's another heartbreaking loss on the road, which has been kind of a theme for them on the road so far this season, where not only they've not been very good on the road, but there's been a couple of times where they had chances of getting a point out of a game on the road, and they failed to do that because they concede a late winner. But that being said, let me now move on into the next game and actually switch the board right now and look at the last 6 games of this match week. But yeah, next up, how about FC Cincinnati getting back-to-back victory after they went on a horror stretch where I believe they won 1 game out of 14. And they got that back-to-back win courtesy of a 2-1 win over the Chicago Fire. And they actually got off to a great start in this game when Alan Cruz scores 27 seconds into this game, which is the fastest goal that FC Cincinnati has scored so far in this short MLS tenure to give them a 1-0 lead. But Chicago did win a penalty right about the half-hour mark, and it was a very questionable penalty because originally the referee didn't call this a penalty, but call it a free kick after Waston clearly brought down CJ Sapon near the 18-yard box. But when they look at VAR, and that when I look at the replay of VAR, there was two different kind of angle that they showed us. One angle shows that Waston brought Sapon down in the box, and one angle showed that Waston brought Sapon down on the line, and that it was really kind of like a 50-50 call, and that depending on which angle you look at, it could be a penalty and that it couldn't have been a penalty. And that whenever that happens, I would think that it's not clear and obvious, and that, you know, when you have like it's important to note that before this go to VAR, they said that it was a penalty and it was a free kick decision. And that when you have this situation where it's 50-50, I don't think it's clear and obvious. But yet somehow the referee thought that it was clear and obvious and gave the penalty away or give the penalty for Chicago. Now, the good news for FC Cincinnati is that Chicago did miss this penalty and that they were still able to hang on to this 1-0 lead. Nico Gaitan unfortunately hits the post to deny a chance for Chicago to get the equalizer. But unfortunately for FC Cincinnati, right as they were about to head to halftime and looked like they were going to get a 1-0 lead heading to halftime, they concede another penalty. And this time it was no doubt a penalty because when the ball was crossed in, it was handled by Alvis Pau and his hand was in an unnatural position. And that Gaitan had a chance to redeem himself to try to convert a penalty that he missed earlier. And although he once again missed a penalty, this time it was saved by Spencer Ritchie. Fortunate for him, the ball came right back to him where he was able to slot it into the empty net to tie the game up at 1 apiece. Now, in the second half, Chicago once again dominate possession, and pretty much throughout this game, they pretty much dominate possession and dominate the chances that they have created. But tell me if you have heard this story before. Chicago dominate possession, they dominate shots, they dominate shots on goal, they dominate the chances that they have created, and yet they are unable to put the ball into the back of the net because they're not very clinical. And it was once again the case in this game, and once again they were made to pay because of that. Because in the 83rd minute, one of the rare opportunities that FC Cincinnati had going forward on goal, it would be Fernando Adi that able to slot it home from Kakuta Mane, and that is the first goal for Fernando Adi in an FC Cincinnati shirt in MLS this season. I mean, it only took 4 months for him to finally get things going, and it only took 4 months for our DP striker to score and potentially supply the goals this season to finally break through, isn't it? I mean, that's definitely good. But in all kidding aside, you know, this has to be a great goal for FC Cincinnati to score, and also for Adi to score, because I mean, Adi this season, it's clear that he is having one of the worst seasons in his career in MLS, and that, you know, he's been having off-field issue and also unable to score goals. And as I mentioned earlier with Theo Bunbury, of the fact that he was also in a stretch where he couldn't score a goal, and that he couldn't quite put the ball into the back end until he finally did, and then eventually it kind of sparked a couple of games with him scoring a goal. Hopefully that will be the case now for Fernando Adi, where once he has scored a goal and end his drought of not scoring a goal in MLS ever since last year when he scored a goal in his final game with the Portland Timbers. Hopefully now that he can, of course, score a couple of goals for this team. But yep, that is the final score of this game, as FC Cincinnati was able to hold onto their lead. And in terms of the shots in this game, Chicago had 20 shots compared to 6 that FC Cincinnati has. 7 shots on goal compared to 3 that FC Cincinnati has. 9 shots off target compared to 2 that FC Cincinnati has. 4 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that FC Cincinnati has. And possession-wise, 60% possession compared to 40% possession that FC Cincinnati has. And that, for Chicago, like I said, this is not the first time that this has happened where they dominate the whole game, and that you would think that they should get 3 points because of how much they dominate on the stat line. They are just not being clinical whatsoever. And right now, I think for FC Cincinnati, it is clear that, I won't be surprised on Monday that I found out that somebody from Chicago is going to get fired from this team, because it is clear that this team not only hasn't been inconsistent this season, but it's getting to a point where they are really starting to fall off a cliff, and they are heading into a downward spiral where they're not going to make the playoffs this season. And that if that is going to be the case, and after all this hope of the fact that they can maybe get to the playoffs after all these kind of signings that they did in the offseason, yeah, something tells me that somebody is going to get fired, and I think most likely it's going to be Veljko Paunovic that's going to get fired, and that he's definitely going to be the next head coach for me to say that is going to be fired from this season. But moving on into the next match is RSL. So RSL, they bounced back in a big way after suffering that heartbreaking loss against the Quakes last week by winning 4-0 against the Union. And they got all to this demolition kind of game over the Union by scoring in the first half and 23 minutes in when Savarino scores from Herrera. And RSL has a very difficult decision now with Jefferson Savarino, because, as I mentioned before in the news of the week, Savarino is a guy that's been drawing a lot of interest in teams in Europe, and there are also some team in the Premier League that wants his service and want to buy him. And now the question is, do you decide to sell him off to Europe, or that do you decide to keep him? Because if you sell him and that you get a good offer off of that, then it can definitely help to bring in some more great guys in this RSL team, and can definitely fix some of the problems that they have in this team. But if they decide to sell him, they are going to lose one of their most important attacking pieces, and it's probably right now the most important attacking pieces so far in this team. Because when you look at what Savarino did in this game, where he just completely cut open that Union defense by himself, yeah, something tells me that he might be too important of a player to basically sell him off to Europe right now. But again, like I said, if the offer comes right, RSL definitely going to have a very difficult decision, and it will be very tempting that if the right offer does come, that RSL does not pull the trigger and say that they would kind of accept the offer and sell him off to Europe. But in the second half, and speaking of Savarino, he would score again from Beckerman. Savarino, what a night he had in this game with 2 goals and 1 assist. And like I said, he pretty much completely destroyed this Union defense in this game. Now, the Union did have a chance to get one back, and it was actually Andrew Wooten, a guy that they just bought a couple of weeks ago and making his first appearance for the Union. And on his very first touch in his Union debut, he scored a goal to give the Union a 2-1. Well, he gave the Union a chance to come back, and only now down by 1. The only problem is that goal got disallowed because when the ball was coming into Wooten, the ball was already out of play, and that was the reason why the goal was called back. So the game stayed at 2-0, and RSL basically just pretty much put the game away in the latter stage when Rusnak scores from Savarino to make it 3-0. Then Krylak complete the demolition from Everton Luiz to make it 4-0 in favor of RSL. And yeah, RSL with an impressive 4-0 win. And in terms of shots in this game, they had 14 shots compared to 5 that Philly has. 8 shots on goal compared to none that the Union had, 3 shots off target compared to 5 that Philly has, 3 shots that was blocked compared to none that Philly has, and possession-wise, 56% possession compared to 44% possession that Philly has. So for RSL, it's a big win for them against a team that is definitely tough to beat when they are on the road. I mean, the Union so far this season has been very good on the road, but this was definitely not a performance that show why they are one of the best team on the road. I mean, this was probably the worst performance that they have shown on the road, and I do have a little bit concerned with this Union team after this loss, because they have definitely not looked like a team that should be belonging at the top of the Eastern Conference right now, and that the only reason why they're still at the top of the Eastern Conference right now is because other teams around them are just kind of stumbling and just kind of refuse to get that top spot. I mean, I swear the Eastern Conference this year is just such a shit show, really, with the way that nobody seems to want to be good in the Eastern Conference, and that every time there's an opportunity to try to go at the top of the Eastern Conference, a team would stumble and get an untimely loss and miss an opportunity to get to the top. And that, yeah, I mean, the Union, they're very lucky the fact that they're still in first place, but if they keep playing the way that they've been playing the last couple of games, which they haven't been looking very good in the last couple of games, then I do have a feeling that some of the team behind them will catch them up and get that top spot from the Eastern Conference. But moving on into the next game is Sporting KC. So, in the last game I talk about Sporting KC and I say that, with them winning 1-0, it definitely is something that they need to trying to get back into the playoff race in the Western Conference. But my main concern about that win is that it didn't look very convincing, and that, it just felt like it was a glass half empty kind of win that Sporting KC had, and that I feel like they need to try to get a more convincing win to kind of convince me that they are starting a second half resurgence. Well, after this game against Vancouver, I have no doubt that they have got that convincing win that kind of convinced me that, yep, that this second half resurgence that Sporting KC is going through is about to happen. And if you're a Western Conference team that is above the red line and that you are fighting to try to stay above the red line and trying to go for a position, this is definitely a bad news for you, with the fact that Sporting KC is another team that could go above the red line and could take a spot away from a team that you might think that might get that spot in the playoffs. And they got the first goal in the 24th minute when Ali Adnan scored an own goal, and originally they said that Jerso, of course, scored an own goal, and that Ali Adnan unfortunately kind of deflected into the back of the net. But later on, they changed it because the shot by Jerso was actually off target, and that when Ali Adnan basically redirect that shot, it went into the back of the net, and hence that's why it's an own goal. Now, in the second half, the Whitecaps did start it too threatening. The first half was just a terrible first half by the Whitecaps, and that Sporting KC actually had chances to maybe get more than just a one goal that they had in the first half. And the Whitecaps, they definitely woke up in the second half and looked to try to get the equalizer, but they couldn't quite do that. And because of that, Sporting KC was able to try to get that second goal, which eventually they found it when Felipe Gutierrez scores from Jerso. Jerso had a very good game in this one, involving all 3 goals that Sporting KC scored in this one. And it's definitely about time that Jerso has a good game. I mean, he's been due to have a very impressive game for Sporting KC, and indeed, this was the game that he had an impressive game, and that he concluded his impressive night when he scored in the 90th minute from Naismith and Russell to complete the 3-0 rout over Vancouver. And in terms of the shots in this game, Vancouver had 13 shots compared to 20 that Sporting KC had. 6 shots on goal compared to 10. Is it 10? Yeah, 10 shots on goal that Sporting KC had. 3 shots off target compared to 7 that Sporting KC had. 4 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that Sporting KC had. and Sporting KC had 56% possession compared to 44% possession that Vancouver has. So, for Sporting KC, like I said, this is the convincing win that they desperately need, and that maybe they have definitely turned a corner, and that this second half resurgence has officially begun for them. And as for Vancouver, something tells me that this could be the first team that I could say in the Western Conference that they are possibly done for the playoffs. Especially what they have been through in these last couple of games where they are struggling to get wins at home and also struggling to get points. Something tells me that this team could be done for the season, and now they find themselves rock bottom in the Western Conference, and that they are also finding themselves getting distant away from a chance of potentially making the playoffs this season. But moving on into the next game is Portland. So Portland, they drew 2-2 in this game against the Rapids, and this was definitely a very entertaining game, and a game that, Colorado, I think you would say that they'll be happy with a result, but at the same time, they'll kind of be a little bit disappointed of the fact that they maybe could have got that third goal, and that the reason why Colorado wasn't able to get the third goal or even get more than 2 goals in this game was that Steve Clark basically had a David Bingham type of performance. And in the first half, Portland actually got the first goal, and Tommy Smith actually scored an own goal in this, and I gotta say, this is probably the best own goal that I have seen someone score in a long time in MLS, and that there's no doubt that this is the best own goal this season, because when the ball was coming in, Tommy Smith was basically wide open, and he had a free header to basically hit it into the back of the net, which he exceptionally able to do that with great technique to basically hit that one into the back of the net. The only problem with that is that, unfortunately, he had it into his own net. And I swear, the more that I look at it, I just wonder, did he actually did that on purpose? Because, I know sometimes defender, when a corner is taken, it's actually more... It doesn't take a lot for a defender to basically head it into his own net when he basically couldn't kind of head it in, or he gets his technique wrong. But when I look at that play, the more I look at it, it just feels like that was just too perfect for me to say a defender just get his technique wrong in terms of heading the ball away. And it just feels like Tommy Smith actually did that on purpose and kind of scored an own goal on that. Now, I think the evidence of why he did not did that on purpose is, after he noticed what he did, he immediately collapsed on his ground, and he basically held his hands in his hands, while his teammate, of course, trying to show some sympathy of him. But yeah, that was actually an amazing own goal, and it's also no wonder why Colorado has been scoring so many heading goals, because that heading goal that Tommy Smith scored as an own goal is kind of similar to some of the many headed goal that they have scored from a corner this season. Now, the good news for Colorado and the good news for Tommy Smith is that Colorado would immediately respond. And when I mean immediate, I mean literally 30 seconds after the own goal, Jonathan Lewis ties the game up at 1 apiece, and that has to be very infuriating if you're the Portland Timbers. Sure, you probably don't deserve to go up 1-0 because of the own goal, because the Timbers didn't really do much for the first 25 minutes. But the fact that you have a lapse of concentration after that goal, and a goal that you didn't even score, that is kind of a bit embarrassing. And that credit to Colorado of the fact that, after going down 1-0, and that this own goal could have easily let their heads drop, they immediately able to respond and tie it up just almost instantly after they score that own goal. Now, in the second half, Portland went down to 10 men when Cascante made a nasty challenge off of one of the Colorado player. I think it was, I don't remember who exactly Cascante made a nasty kind of scissor kind of tackle on, but it was off of one of the Rapids player and definitely deserved a red card. And I know Timbers fan, I know that that after when this red card happened, they of course boo at the referee, and they didn't boo at the referee because of Cascante made a horror kind of tackle and that it shouldn't been a red card. But what was so controversial about this is before the play, it looked like there should have been a free kick, and that Blanco actually was brought down just outside the 18-yard box, and that somehow in some way the referee didn't blow his whistle, and then literally on about 10 seconds later, that's when Cascante made that horror tackle. And I understand that, they should have had a free kick there and that this red card would have never happened, but if Cascante did that on a sense that he's frustrated the fact that his team didn't get a free kick from outside the box, then yeah, that is definitely not a great idea. Like, retribution should definitely not shown in a way where you just made an absolute horror tackle that could have easily ended a career of that Colorado Rapids player that of course was the victim of that horror tackle. But Portland, they did take the lead despite the fact that they went down a man in this game, and it was Lawless Abubakar that unfortunately commits a handball into the box, which Diego Valeri basically puts away. But as we continue the game, I was kind of a little bit surprised that Giovanni Savarese decided not to put a center back in this game. And speaking of Giovanni Savarese, my thoughts and prayer is definitely with his family, and the fact that before the game, they of course announced that before the game they announced that he just realized that his father of course passed away this morning, and that he actually fly back to Portland after visiting his father that was definitely having some medical issue, and unfortunately he found out later that when he came back that his father passed away, and he could have easily not coached this game and could have just flown right back to Italy to try to take care of his father, but he decided to coach in this game, and you can definitely see when this own goal went in how much it means to Giovanni Savarese, and also how much the players literally just immediately gone to Savarese to celebrate with him from what it means to their coach. But unfortunately Savarese wasn't able to get a win in this, and in some part is one of the reason why that is the case is because I was kind of surprised he didn't bring a center back in this. Like, after Cascante got sent off, I thought he was going to bring a center back and try to kind of bring back like for a defender for the Timbers, and because of that caused Colorado to had multiple chances to get the equalizer, and eventually they found it when Sam Nicholson scores from Danny Wilson. It was a great goal from Sam Nicholson to basically curl that one to the left, and that of course ties the game up at 2 apiece for the Rapids. And despite the fact that the Rapids did try to get a couple of more chances to maybe get that third goal, they weren't able to find a way to get the third goal, and that of course is why this game stays at a 2-2 draw. And also, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that why Steve Clark was in a David Bingham mode. Well, in the latter part of the first half, the Rapids had a chance to take a 2-1 lead, and that Steve Clark made an absolute amazing double save. First off of Shinyashiki, as Shinyashiki was looking to try to tap it in, and then on the second one when Kamara basically trying to hit it off the rebound, but Steve Clark of course made a good double save on that to preserve at that point a 1-1 tie. And yeah, that of course is the final score. Well, later on, that of course is the final score as the game ends in a 2-2 draw. And in terms of shots in this game, Portland had 15 shots compared to 14 that the Rapids had, 5 shots on goal compared to 8 that the Rapids had, 7 shots off target compared to 4 that the Rapids had, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that the Rapids had, and possession-wise, 60% possession compared to 40% possession that the Rapids had. And despite the fact that if you're a Rapids fan and you would say, or actually, if you're a Rapids fan and that if you would have if your team would have come to Providence Park and get a point out of the game, you would have been probably very happy with that. But because of the fact that they were up a man for the last 28 minutes and that they had chances of potentially get a win in this game against a Timbers team that didn't look very good in this game, they'll definitely be feeling a little bit disappointed that they didn't get all 3 points. But having said that, for them, it's still a good point to earn in a place that it is very hard to get a point out of. And as for Portland, yes, they did drop points at home, and yes, they didn't look sharp, but you got to keep in mind that this is like, their 4th game in 10 days now, and that, fatigue is definitely starting to kind of catch up with this team, and that they just didn't look that sharp coming into this game. But I have no doubt that they are going to look more sharper in these upcoming games, and that, being 2 points at home when you have 11 more opportunity to get all 3 points and get into the playoffs, I don't think that would be a bit of a problem of them. They won't feel that disappointed the fact that they, of course, dropped 2 points at home when they probably should have get 3 points in this game. But moving on into the next match is Seattle. So Seattle, of course, win 2-1 against Atlanta in this potential MLS Cup kind of preview. And in the first half, there was actually no score, but there was definitely chances for both teams to score. And one thing I realized for Atlanta in this game is that they definitely did not look very good in terms of the defensive end. And this is definitely started to be a little bit of a problem for Atlanta because, as I said in some of the previous game, their defense did not look good whatsoever, and that they commit some sloppy kind of mistake at the back that, of course, allowed their opponents to get a chance to score a goal. And when you look at in this game, and especially in the second half, the 2 goals that they conceded was all because of sloppy mistake and that their defense just give the ball away in their own half. And in the first incident, I think it was Gresso that gave the ball away in a bad position. But what was so good about this first goal wasn't because of the fact that Atlanta gave the ball in a bad position and then Seattle was able to capitalize it, but the fact that Rui Diaz was able to just flick the ball over Miles Robinson's hand and then hits it on the volley to give Seattle a 1-0 lead. I mean, I'm sorry, but that is just absolutely filthy, and that the way that he done Miles Robinson like that is just... It's not even fair, the way that he just didn't like that. And there is no doubt that I actually put a question mark of whether or not if this is the goal of the week. Yeah, no. I'm going to erase this question mark. It is definitely the goal of the week. And heck, it might even be in contention of goal of the year because the technique and how hard you have to kind of execute that is just... It's just incredible. Like, I couldn't believe what I just saw there. And I'm pretty sure the ESPN announcer, John Champion, and even Taylor Twellman couldn't even believe what they have just saw there. And Seattle, of course, just like that, gets a 1-0 lead. Now, Atlanta did get the equalizer in this, and originally it looked like they got the equalizer straight away when Pity Martinez scored only his 2nd goal this season, but it was later called off because he was in an offside position. But he did get part of he was part of the equalizing goal when he, of course, delivered a ball into the box where Joseph Martinez was basically wide open in the box and had a free header to strike, which anytime when you give a free header to Joseph Martinez, yeah, that is not a good idea, and that that you are going to get score on. And that is exactly what happened when Martinez, of course, scores from Pity Martinez to tie the game up at 1 apiece. And that was really the first time Martinez actually had a chance going forward and had a chance to look at goal and strike one toward goal. I mean, other than this goal that Joseph Martinez has scored, he had a very quiet game in this one between them and the Seattle Sounders. Now, the Sounders, 6 minutes later, would get the lead back when Harry Shipp scores from Morris and Ladero. And once again, this was because of a poor giveaway, this time from Leandro Gonzalez Perez, that of course sets up an attack for Seattle, which they were able to convert and get the lead back in this game. And they end up holding on to this win, or hold on to win this game as they win 2-1 against the Seattle Sounders. And in terms of shots in this game, 18 shots compared to 12 that Atlanta has, 6 shots on target compared to 2 that Atlanta has, 9 shots off target compared to 6 that Atlanta has, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that Atlanta has, and possession-wise, 57% possession compared to 43% possession. And you can clearly see that now that Seattle has got most of their star power back and most of their attacking piece back after most of them were going to international duty, you can see how good this team is, and that I definitely think that this could be one of the teams that could really challenge LAFC in terms of that Western Conference spot. And as for Atlanta, this is not the first time we have seen them play in a big game and that they weren't able to get all 3 points. But like I said, that defense, which was rock solid for a part of this season, where they actually had a stretch where they didn't concede a goal for 6 games. Nowadays, it looked very, very shaky, and I don't exactly know why that is the case, because it's basically the same kind of back line that were part of that stretch where they didn't concede a goal for a very long time. So yeah, that's something that they're going to have to try to fix if they want to get themselves up the table. But with that being said, now moving on into the final game of this week, and a game that is going to have a lot of talking point, not because of the fact that this was an exciting game and that this was an expected intensive kind of derby where both of the players were kind of like getting into each other's faces and the challenge was really flying in. But a lot of the talking point in this game is going to be this. So, I knew that if this game, of course, ended 2-1, I knew the Royal goal is going to come back to basically be the big discussion point of this game, because what happened in this play was that Royal, of course, heads it into the back of the net. But when you look at the beginning of the play, before the play was restarted, the linesman over there, he basically says that it was supposed to be a corner for the Redbulls, and that for whatever reason, the Redbulls decided to take a throw-in. And originally, I was kind of surprised the fact that the linesman basically said it was a corner and that the Redbulls basically take a throw-in, and why exactly the referee did not decide to blow his whistle and kind of stop play and said that it should be a corner instead of a throw-in. But they let him keep going, and that NYCFC was just completely caught off guard in terms of the fact that it was supposed to be a throw-in instead of being a corner. Like, pretty much their entire team was ready to kind of like set up for a corner. Like even Chanot, who was like walking on the byline, was already ready to kind of set up for a corner. And as soon as he turned his head, he realized that the Red Bulls had already kind of go on the attack, and he thought that they kind of took a quick kind of restart. And next thing you know, Royer was able to head it in after NYCFC was completely caught napping. And I do understand the fact that NYCFC have every rights to be mad about this, because the linesman clearly said that it was supposed to be a corner, and that later I found out that it was actually going to be a throw-in, but the linesman actually made the linesman had a disagreement with the main referee, and that instead of, he actually decided to, he kind of at the last minute decided to raise his left arm and said that it should be a throw-in, even though he already pointed his flag to be a corner, and that kind of really confused a lot of NYCFC player, and that I definitely understand that situation kind of in some way ruined this game. But at the same time, you need to always kind of be alert in that situation. And credit to the Red Bulls, they completely caught NYCFC off guard in that situation. And although it's going to, if they score that goal in that situation, that they will know that it's going to be a very controversial moment of the fact that, that should have been a corner instead of being a throw-in, and that, you know, the NYCFC player was absolutely confused about that. They, of course, will take it, and they, of course, got that 2-1 lead. And by the way, in the first half, just a quick talk of what happened in the first half. Bear, of course, scores from Tinnerholm and Morales, and the Redbulls, of course, did get the equalizer from Royer. And, you know, when you look at this game, and saying the fact that in some way it kind of ruined this game, I wouldn't say that the reason why I wouldn't say it completely ruined this game is because this was really a tale of two halves in this one. Like, NYCFC absolutely dominate the first half, and the Redbulls just could not do anything on the attacking end. And then in the second half, it was the opposite story. Like, NYCFC, of them being very successful in the first half in terms of winning the ball and not allowing the Redbulls to win the ball from the press. Yeah, you know, they just kind of struggle in the second half, and the Redbulls, of course, take full advantage of that and getting that second goal, and which is why this goal before halftime really killed NYCFC momentum, because they were by far the better team, and that they should definitely deserve to go up at halftime instead of tying the game up. But that, of course, wasn't the case. The Redbulls, of course, walk away with a very controversial derby win against NYCFC. And in terms of shots in this game, 10 shots over 9 that NYCFC had. Both teams had 5 shots on goal. Both teams had 3 shots off target, 2 shots that was blocked compared to 1 that NYCFC had. And NYCFC had 59% possession compared to 41% possession that the Redbulls had. But obviously, at the end of the day, this call is going to be one that's going to be a debate throughout this week. And yeah, again, I do feel a little bit bad for NYCFC. The fact that, you know, that should definitely not have happened, and that they should have definitely know that it should have been a throw-in instead of a corner, and that the linesman kind of screw up on that play. But having said that, you know, like I said, I don't think that really completely ruined this game for them. They were just not being very good in the second half, and also they kind of switched off in that moment, and that is the reason why it resulted them not winning this one. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the review of this match week. And again, I know this was a very long review, and this was almost an 80-minute kind of review, but since there were so many good games this week, and there was so many controversial calls that I have to talk about, that's why this was a very long video. But if you made it to the end, then I definitely want to congratulate you and thank you for the support of you watching this long video. But yeah, either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time, and I will do the preview for the midweek games tomorrow.